Hi, I'm Ruth and welcome to my channel So Dysfunctional. I'm here today to bring you a review of a top as part of the Sew a Top 2020 challenge. This challenge has been set by Claire from Penguin and Pear. So this is designed as a vlog hop challenge. So every day throughout August, a different vlogger is putting up a video and a review of a top that they have sewn. I've watched all of them so far. It's been really nice to know that there's something coming out each day, and I think most of the vloggers have been new to me, so it's been really nice to see some new people and add some people to my subscription list. So I will put up a picture of the playlist for the month. So over on Claire's channel on Penguin and Pear, there is a playlist for this challenge, and she is adding each of the videos as they come in each day, so they're just all in one place. You can go there. I will leave a link for that in the description box. Yesterday's video was brought to you by Mandy from Pickety Stitch Life is So Creative. She did a really nice looking top by the Itch to Stitch pattern company. I'd really recommend going and having a look at that. It was a new top to me, and it's another one I've added to my list for when I'm allowed to buy patterns again. If you haven't seen my other videos, I'm on a fabric and pattern ban at the moment because I've got so many things that I haven't used, which was why this was a really good challenge for me, because I tend to ogle dress patterns all the time in sewing. I don't know about anyone else, but it's what I gravitate to, and I hardly ever wear a dress. So I've got all these dress patterns and a few dresses that I've made, and I just don't wear them. I live basically in jeans and tops. So this was a real kick up the bum for me to get a pattern out that I haven't used before. I had an embarrassingly large number of top patterns that I have not used to choose from, so this was brilliant for me. In the end, I decided to make a pattern which is actually free. So if any of you see this video and fancy having a go at making it, you can without having to spend a lot of money. So what I've chosen is the Peplum top from Peppermint magazine, and I think it's issue 31. I will double check that, and I will also put that in the description box, the link to it. So Peppermint magazine, if you don't know, is an online resource, and they have quite a lot of sewing patterns on there, and this one is made by In the Folds. So yeah, it's called the Peplum top. I saw this pattern at the beginning of the summer and quite fancied having a go at it, but I was not quite sure whether it was going to be the right shape for me. So jury's out on that. You can let me know what you think. So this pattern is a beginner pattern, and it comes in sizes A to K, which is slightly unusual. It's their own sizing system. I'm just going to check my notes and tell you what the size range is in terms of measurements. So this is drafted for a B cup bust. And the body measurements, it suggests, go from 30 to 51.5 inch bust, 24 to 45.5 inch waist, and 33 to 54.5 inch hip. But in terms of the actual pattern, because it is so loose fitting, I'd say that there's a little bit of play in that, to be honest. I'm actually an A cup bust, just about. And I made a size C, which is a 34 inch bust. Even though this is drafted as a B cup pattern, I wasn't too worried because it's very loose fitting, so I wasn't worried about the high bust being too tight, and as it is, yes, it's been absolutely fine. So it requires 150 centimetre wide fabric, and that is because the size of the Peplum pieces is quite wide. Having said that though, if you've got a narrower fabric, you could always make the Peplum out of more than one piece. Or you could just use slightly less fabric in the Peplum. I can't see why you couldn't do that. So if you really like this pattern and your fabric was say 140 centimetres wide, I just don't think you'd notice if you made it out of a slightly less wide fabric. And also the fabric requirements, it says 1.2 meters, and I'm assuming that's for all sizes. The fabric it suggests for this pattern is light wovens, so I can read you a few of the things it suggests: cotton, linen, silk, crepe, de chine, viscose, rayon, that kind of thing. The instructions are pretty straightforward, I would say, and fine to understand. There are illustrations, they're just line drawings, not pictures, but it's all fairly straightforward. There's nothing too difficult in this top, so yeah, I mean, they couldn't really throw you too many googlies with the instructions anyway. In terms of the pattern, I think the only thing I'd say about sort of the construction of it and how it's laid out and things like that is that the notches are slightly confusing. So it's a multi-size pattern, of course, and you can possibly layer it if you are printing it at home and just print out the size you need. But because I was doing it as an A0 file, I just got all the sizes on one pattern sheet. And the notches at the bottom of the top and the top of the peplum that are there to sort of guide you roughly as to where they join up are slightly confusing because they haven't got any size markings on it. So it's just a load of notches, and the back parts are all marked with double notches. So when I got to that, there was just this kind of intermingle of notches, and I was like, I'm not quite sure. I wasn't even sure kind of how wide the first set of notches was. So not a massive deal, but just one of those things that you just sort of think, well, could you not just find some way to make it obvious which set of notches go with which size? So the fabric I decided to use to make my top was a viscose twill. So if I'm honest, maybe it was possibly slightly heavier weight than they're intending for the pattern. And I'll talk a little bit later on about what that may or may not have done to the way that the top has come out. So it's a really straightforward top. It's just a bodice piece with a gathered peplum around. It's got a really nice detail. I'll put in a sort of picture, a line drawing picture for you. I don't know if you can see very easily here, but it's got this really nice detail of a shoulder yoke that goes from here to about there, front to back. So you have a front piece and a back piece, and then the two shoulder yoke pieces. The one thing I would say about making this top, which is a bit of a fiddle, is the binding. So it comes with pieces to make a neckline binding piece and armhole binding pieces. And this is why when it said beginner, and then I got to this bit, I kind of thought, is this beginner? I mean, yes, I guess using binding is a kind of core beginner skill. But I would have said making your own binding is, I don't know, a little bit more than beginner. Certainly when you choose a viscose twill to make it out of, because this stuff, I mean, it grows as you cut it. So when I was cutting the binding for this, I mean, I was just crossing my fingers that it would be okay. And I just put it on the ironing board and I laughed because it was not straight at all. I think it, you know, in the long run, it's not too much of a problem because you can just fiddle it a bit and it's fine. But maybe if you're making it out of a more stable fabric, fine, cotton. But I think lightweight fabrics by their nature quite often can be a little bit more shifty. So yeah, I would say if you are a beginner and you'd like to have a go at this top, maybe steer clear of viscose and the really kind of shifty stuff to start with. The binding was not easy, and oh, it was boring. And I was making it this week and it's been so hot and I'm stuck on the top floor of my house with my iron. It was boiling up here and I was sort of sweating over this binding, thinking, why am I doing this? It did briefly cross my mind that I should just use a shop bought binding, but then of course it wouldn't have been the same weight as fabric and it may have ended up pulling and not looking very nice. So I stuck with it and I did make the binding. The binding is actually one place where I decided to deviate from the instructions. So the instructions tell you to attach the front and back to the yoke, shoulder yoke, and then having already sewn up the back bodice seam, so joining the two back pieces together, and then up the side seams, and then it wants you to insert the binding in the armhole and the whole of the neckline in the round. I'll just show you the pieces actually because it's sort of slightly fiddly looking. So this is the back piece, so it's designed when you sew that to the mirroring back piece that you then have this fold that will fold back on itself and fit underneath the top. And to match that, the binding has this sort of weird triangular end bit. And when I looked at the instructions, it wasn't complicated, but it seemed over fussy and fiddly. And it would have given you a binding finish that was completely enclosed. I grant them that. It's probably neater and tidier than what I've ended up with. But basically I couldn't be bothered to do all of that faff. So I actually did my binding for the neckline and the armholes flat. So I just sewed up front and back to the shoulder yokes, and then I inserted my binding, which for the neckline I think worked absolutely fine because of the fact that you're on a V. When you've then sewn up your seam, the seam allowance is then lower than the seam, so there was absolutely no worry that when pressing that seam out it was going to poke out. I'll put in a picture to show you what the finished bit of the back of the neckline looks like from the inside. The armhole, I followed a tutorial which I found online, and I will link that in the description box. It was actually designed for a neckline, I think, to be sewn when you've sewn one shoulder seam, and then you sew in your binding, and then you sew up the other shoulder seam. But you know, same thing, sewing up a circle. So I thought, well, that's fine, that'll work for the armholes as well. So yeah, I mean, I was happy with the way that worked, and I would recommend giving it a try, especially the neck binding. I just can't see a reason really, apart from enclosing it all in on itself. I just can't see a reason for going through all that faff. It's not just the faff of sewing it, it's the faff of cutting that pointy triangle-y bit. Now when I looked at this pattern, I did think it looked a little bit short, obviously intentionally short, and when I looked on Instagram, a couple of people had put up that they had lengthened the peplum. So I just made up the bodice to start with, and then I tried it on and took a tape measure and decided where I wanted the peplum to come to. And I'm glad I did that because I lengthened the peplum by 10 centimetres. So maybe if you're thinking about making this top, but you're also thinking you might need to lengthen it, possibly about 1.5 metres might be a better bet for your fabric requirements. So I will pop in a little video of me wearing this top so you can have a look at it. As I said, I'm not quite sure that the fabric choice is completely right. As you can see, the bodice sort of pulls down a bit to the side. I don't think the pattern piece is designed like that, but for some reason it's sort of dipping down to the sides, and I wonder if that's to do with the weight of the fabric simply pulling it down at the sides. It also at the back pulls up a little bit to the centre seam, and I'm not quite sure why that's happened. I didn't notice that the back bodice looked wavy like that before I put the peplum in. I don't know, perhaps someone can tell me why that might be the case. Again, I suppose if it's dipping at the sides, maybe that's why, because it's all structured from the neckline. But again, if you make this out of a lighter weight fabric, that will probably not happen. I think my biggest reservation about this top is that I'm just not quite sure it suits me. I tend to wear a slightly more fitted style of top, and this just feels very, very roomy, and it's not shapeless, but it's just not the shape that I would normally wear. But I do like the kind of the essence of the pattern, so I do think I'll make it again, possibly not this year now, because of course now I've finished it, the hot weather seems to have disappeared and we are looking at rain for the next week at least. What I will do next time is I will raise the armhole. It's just a little bit low for me. You can basically just about see my bra. So I would perhaps bring it up, not very much, maybe just an inch or something. And also I think I would probably put less fabric in the peplum, depending on the fabric that I was using. Basically just make it a little bit less fabric heavy at the bottom. So I think all in all, I'm happy with this make. As I say, it's just not a style I would normally wear, so I think I just need to get it out and wear it and feel a bit comfortable in it and see what I think. So that is the end of my review. I hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful. I don't think there have been any problems with this pattern, but hopefully there have been some things in this review that will help you decide whether you want to make it, what size you perhaps need to look at, any adjustments you might make, things to watch out for. I think any of the problems that I came up against are purely a style thing with me. I don't think it's anything to do with the pattern, and possibly also my fabric choice. So I mean, it's a great pattern. It doesn't take that long to make up. It's fairly straightforward. I would really give it a go if you fancy something like this in your wardrobe. So tomorrow's video on the Sew a Top Vlog Hop tour is being brought to you by June at the Serial Hobbyist Girl. I will leave a link for that in the description box. Please do go and have a look at her video when it comes out tomorrow. and make a note of everyone else that's coming up on the list, or head to Claire's playlist at Penguin and Pear. As I say, I've really enjoyed watching the other videos that have been up so far, and I'm really looking forward to see what else is coming in August. I'm really pleased that mine is out of the way, because I can admit that I have spent the first 2 weeks of August petrified that someone else would have chosen the same pattern as me and I'd end up doing the same review, which would have been boring, but they haven't, and my top is done now, so I can stop worrying about that. Please give this video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it, and leave me a comment in the comments box down underneath the video. I really like chatting to people. I love it when people engage with the video. Let me know if you've made the top yourself, what changes you might have made, whether something in this video has helped you or just given you something else to think about with this top. I'd really love to hear from you. And also, if you're not a subscriber and you sort of found your way here via the vlog hop and you would like to see my next video, please do hit the subscribe button. It would be great to have you along on my crazy YouTube whirlwind. Don't forget to check out June at the Serial Hobbyist Girl for tomorrow's Sew a Top vlog. And thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!